It was just another Saturday morning, February 28th, a regular day in Minab, a quiet coastal city in southern Iran. Mothers were making breakfast, fathers were heading to work, and 165 little girls were grabbing their backpacks, tying their shoes, and walking to school. They were 7 years old, 8, 12. They had homework due, they had friends waiting, they had no idea what was coming. At exactly 10:45 a.m., the sky cracked open. A missile came screaming down from nowhere and slammed directly into the Shahzahan Tayyab School. The roof collapsed. The walls exploded inward. Debris rained down on children who were still sitting at their desks, still holding their pencils. And then, just as rescuers rushed in, just as people started pulling bodies from the rubble, just as voices could be heard crying beneath the concrete, a second missile hit, the exact same spot. In military terminology, they call it a double tap attack. You hit a target, you wait for the rescuers to arrive. Then you hit it again. When the smoke finally cleared, 165 girls were dead. Most of them were between the ages of 7 and 12. Over 90 more were wounded, and the world was left asking one question that nobody in Washington wanted to answer. Who gave the order? We didn't know there was a school there. That was the official response. The United States, the country with the most powerful military in the history of human civilization, the country whose intelligence agencies knew the daily schedule of Iran's supreme leader. The country that tracked 40 of Iran's top military commanders across 1,000 miles and eliminated them with surgical precision. That country says it didn't know there was a school there, a school that had been operating for over a decade, a school that appeared clearly on Google Maps, on satellite imagery, on Iranian government records, on every piece of publicly available data you could possibly look up in under 30 seconds. But here's where the story gets darker, because the question isn't just who gave the order. The question is, was it even a human? The machine behind the missiles, oh. For the past several years, the U.S. military has been quietly integrating artificial intelligence into its combat operations. And I don't mean AI that helps with logistics or communication. I mean AI that decides where to strike, AI that decides when to strike, AI that builds the target list and prioritizes the kills. This isn't science fiction. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is documented. This is official. And this is happening right now. The system at the center of this story is called Project Maven, a Palantir-developed military AI platform that has been integrated with Claude AI, the artificial intelligence built by the company Anthropic. According to reports and Senate inquiries, this system was actively used in operations against Iran. It processes over 1,000 potential targets. It analyzes satellite imagery, electronic signals, communication intercepts, movement patterns. And it does all of this with minimum human oversight. Minimum, not zero, not maximum, minimum. And when you understand what that means in practice, that's when you start to realize how 165 girls ended up dead on a Saturday morning. Before Iran, there was Gaza. To understand what happened in Minab, you need to understand what Israel and the United States have already been doing in Gaza for the past 2 years. Because the AI system deployed against Iran, it wasn't new, it wasn't untested. It had already been running a kill factory in one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Meet Habsora. Habsora is an AI targeting system developed by Israel's military intelligence unit. Its job is simple: find things to bomb. It processes drone footage, satellite images, camera feeds, electronic signals, mobile phone data, traffic patterns, everything. And when it detects something suspicious, it flags it for an analyst and suggests a strike. Here's the number that will make your stomach drop. Before Habsora, a team of 20 intelligence officers working together could identify approximately 50 viable targets per year in Gaza. Per year. After Habsora, the system can identify 100+ targets in a single day. That's not an improvement in efficiency. That's an industrialization of death. And retired Israeli Lieutenant General Aviv Kohavi, the former chief of staff of the Israeli army, actually said it himself. He described what this technology had created as a mass assassination factory. Those are not my words. That is a former commander of the Israeli military describing his own country's system. The other machine, Lavender. But Habsora was only half the operation. Running alongside it was a second AI system called Lavender. Lavender's job was data. Specifically, it built a complete behavioral profile on every single Palestinian in Gaza. Every phone call, every text message, every social media post, every location check-in, who you talk to, who you meet, who you call at 2 a.m. Lavender took all of that data and assigned every person a score. The higher your score, the more likely the algorithm believed you had connections to Hamas. And if your score crossed a certain threshold, you became a target, not because a human investigator reviewed your case, not because evidence was weighed in front of a judge, because an algorithm decided you were probably guilty. And what happened to the people Lavender flagged? October 2023. the refugee camp, after the Hamas attack on October 7th, 2023, which killed approximately 1,200 Israelis. Israel launched its military response into Gaza with a new set of rules. Old rules. Only senior Hamas commanders could be targeted. Civilian casualties had to be kept to an absolute minimum. Warnings had to be issued before strikes, and a senior officer had to personally verify every single target. New rules, implemented after October 7th. Rule change. Number 1, mid-ranking officers could now authorize strikes against anyone connected to Hamas, not just senior commanders. Rule change number 2, acceptable civilian casualties per strike were raised to 20 per target. Rule change. Number 3, for high-value targets, that number was raised again to 100 civilian deaths per strike. And the warning system, the practice of dropping a small bomb first to give civilians a chance to evacuate, completely eliminated. Now the New York Times published an investigative report documenting these exact changes. This is not speculation. These policy shifts are verified. And so in October 2023, Lavender flagged a refugee camp in Gaza. The AI said a senior Hamas commander who had participated in the October 7th attack was hiding there. Israel launched a 2,000-pound bomb on the camp. No warning, no verification, no hesitation. The result? 126 people dead. Nearly 70 of them were small children. Over 280 more were wounded, all to kill one man. One target, one algorithm's judgment, 126 lives. And here's the part that gets even more chilling. That wasn't an isolated incident. A London-based conflict monitoring organization spent 1 month analyzing Israeli strikes in Gaza. What they found was this. In 136 separate strikes, an average of 15 civilians were killed per strike. Over 15,000 Palestinians were killed in just the first phase of military operations alone, with AI leading the targeting. And today, every one of Gaza's 19 universities has been at least 80% destroyed. As of May 2025, there are virtually no functioning schools remaining. Nearly every hospital has been reduced to rubble. If this is what AI-guided warfare looks like in practice, the results are catastrophic. Back to Minab. Why that school? Now let's go back to that girls' school in southern Iran. Because once you understand how these systems work, what happened in Minab starts to make a terrifying kind of sense. Minab is not just any city. It sits directly on the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which 20 to 25% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas flows every single day. Strategically, it is one of the most critical geographic locations on the planet. And inside Minab, there is a place called Sayyid al-Shuhada, a military complex that serves as the headquarters of the IRGC Navy's missile brigade. The Asif Missile Brigade operates from here, and its location near the strait makes it a high-priority military asset. So yes, there was a legitimate military presence in Minab, but here's what an Al Jazeera investigative team discovered when they pulled together satellite imagery, video footage, on Iranian government records and geolocation data to build a complete timeline. In 2013, the Shahzahan Tayyab School building was physically inside the military compound. 1 shared entrance gate, 5 watchtowers, perimeter walls enclosing the entire complex together. Then, in 2016, everything changed. New walls were constructed. The school area was physically separated from the military block, and 2 watchtowers near the school were removed. 3 new civilian entrances were opened specifically for the school. By 2018, satellite imagery clearly showed civilian vehicles parked outside the school. A playground had been built for children. The school had been fully operating as a civilian educational institution for nearly a decade, 10 years. The school had been a civilian facility for 10 years before those missiles arrived. So what went wrong? There are 2 possibilities, and both of them are damning. Possibility 1, the AI was working from outdated data. The system looked at old satellite imagery and records from when the school was still part of the military compound. It identified the location as a high-value military target. And because there was minimum human oversight, because no one in the chain stopped to say, wait, let's verify this, 2 Tomahawk missiles were fired into a building full of 7-year-old girls. Possibility 2, the AI knew exactly what it was doing. The system knew that children of IRGC Navy personnel attended that school. It classified them, along with their children, as legitimate targets, and it proceeded accordingly. Both scenarios represent a catastrophic failure of ethics, law, and basic human decency. Because here's what international humanitarian law actually states. The law that the United States helped write after World War II. Even if a parent serves in a military organization, targeting their children is illegal. It is a war crime, full stop. The other AI strike you haven't heard about. And Minab wasn't the only mistake. In Tehran, a public park was struck by a missile. The park's name? Police Park. Investigators believe the AI was targeting government and security installations. It scanned the name Police Park, interpreted the word police as a potential security target, and added it to the strike list. A park. A public park where families walked their dogs and children played on weekends. Destroyed because an algorithm read the word police in its name and nobody bothered to check what was actually there. These are not edge cases. These are not bugs to be fixed in the next software update. These are the inevitable results of removing human judgment from life and death decisions. The company that said, "No now." Here's the part of this story that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Before operations against Iran escalated, the US Pentagon wanted to expand its use of Claude AI, Anthropic's system, without any restrictions, no limits, no guardrails, no oversight requirements. Anthropic said no. Specifically, the company drew two firm lines. Line 1, Claude AI will not be used in fully autonomous weapon systems, systems where no human is involved in the decision to fire, where the AI itself decides to launch a missile. Line 2, Claude AI will not be used for mass surveillance of American citizens. The Pentagon refused to accept these conditions. And so Anthropic walked away from what would have been one of the most lucrative government contracts in the company's history. The response from the Trump administration? Anthropic was categorized as a supply chain risk, effectively blacklisted from the Pentagon. Any defense contractor that works with the Pentagon is now prohibited from using Anthropic's products. Think about what just happened there. An AI company said, "Please, we just want one human being in the room when the missiles are being fired." And the United States government responded by blacklisting them. Anthropic's CEO confirmed in an interview that the company isn't against military AI applications broadly. Their position was simply this: AI is not yet reliable enough to make life and death decisions without human involvement. Keeping humans in the loop isn't weakness, it's the bare minimum of ethical responsibility. The government disagreed, and 165 girls paid the price for that disagreement. What is coming next? Let's be honest about where this is heading. Right now, in every conflict where US or Israeli forces are operating, there's at least one human somewhere in the chain, one analyst, one officer, someone, however briefly, glancing at the screen before the strike is authorized. And even with that minimal human presence, we are seeing these results. Children killed in schools, families bombed in parks, refugee camps turned to craters. 15,000 people dead in a single operational phase. An entire city's educational infrastructure erased. Now imagine the version of this where that last human is removed from the equation entirely. The technology already exists, the frameworks are being built, the contracts are being negotiated. The only thing standing between the world and fully autonomous AI warfare is a small collection of companies, lawyers, ethicists, and senators who are trying to hold a line that is being pushed back every single day. Senator after senator in the US Congress has now sent formal requests to the Department of Defense demanding confirmation of whether AI was used in the Minab strike specifically. They want to know whether human verification protocols existed, and they want a commitment that if AI was responsible for this, steps will be taken to ensure it never happens again. The Pentagon has not responded. The question nobody wants to answer. The United States built its global reputation, its entire post-World War II moral authority, on the idea that it was different, that it held itself to a higher standard, that it stood for something. On one hand, the same government that struck a school full of girls tells the world it invaded Iran to protect Iranian women's freedom and human rights. On the other hand, Tomahawk missiles, 7-year-olds, a double tap. The missiles that hit Minab were Tomahawk cruise missiles. This is now confirmed by initial Pentagon investigations. Tomahawk missiles are not exported to Iran. They are not available to terrorist organizations. They are only operated by the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, Australia, and the Netherlands. None of those other countries are at war with Iran. There's only one country that could have fired those missiles. And that country's president, when asked about 165 dead schoolgirls, said, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, "I don't know anything about that." The verdict. Here is what we know. We know AI is being used to select targets in active military operations. We know that AI systems like Habsora can identify 100 targets per day, and that this speed has directly contributed to mass civilian casualties. We know that Lavender assigned death scores to human beings based on their social connections. We know that acceptable civilian casualties per strike were raised to 100 people, and that the warning system was eliminated entirely. We know that the Minab school had been a fully civilian facility for 10 years before it was struck. We know that the AI may have been working from a decade-old data set. We know that Anthropic drew an ethical line and was blacklisted for it. And we know that the most powerful government on Earth is now actively pursuing autonomous weapon systems. Machines that will select aim, and fire without a single human being saying yes. What we don't know is this. When that day comes, when the last human hand is removed from the trigger, who do you hold accountable? Who do you put on trial? Who do you call when the algorithm kills your child? These are not hypothetical questions anymore. For 165 families in Minab, Iran, they are the only questions left. And the answers? The answers are still being decided. Right now, in boardrooms and Pentagon briefings and Senate hearings and Silicon Valley offices. The question is whether we, as a civilization, are paying enough attention to have any say in how they get answered. Because the algorithm doesn't sleep, it doesn't hesitate, it doesn't feel regret, and unless something changes, it is only going to get faster.